Hi there. In this lecture we are going to be doing a similar thing in our Python as we did in our PHP by creating class attributes and some sort of scope. I'll talk a little bit more about that in this lecture, as well as how to handle additional instances of a class or blueprints. So, within our Python paradigm, let us begin by adding an attribute. So what I'm going to do is, again, indented in our Python, I'm going to add a variable or a class variable attribute called color, and I'm going to give it a default value of black. Fantastic. And we don't have our semicolon at the end, so we just leave it as such. And what you will notice about this is that it is now suddenly accessible. We don't need to add a public, private, or protected a prefix to this color at all. So if we wanted to now echo out the color, we could now use self as opposed to this as we would in PHP. We can use our self, and fortunately it is passed into this function, which we saw earlier gives us an error if we don't pass it, and this is why self.color. And again, we call it the same way with a dot. So we should now print out our self's color, which is black. So if we now go python cat.py, we should print out black. Fantastic. I hope that this makes sense to you. Now, the reason that color is working without our public, private, or protected declaration before before the attribute is that, as I mentioned in one of the first lectures, that Python developers are very specific about the way that they do things. And one of the great parts about them being specific is that they assume that you are a cognitive human being, and they assume that you are not going to break certain things. So what they do is the public, private, protected does not feature at all in Python. But if you want to suggest to your developers looking at this code in future not to give this particular attribute access to anything outside of the class, you can follow it by 2 underscores in the attribute name to suggest that this is something specific to this class, the same way that you would write private. But if that developer wanted to break that best case practice that you use here, they could very well easily just call that color if they saw fit. So really the creators of Python are assuming that they're giving you full access and assuming that with your great power you will use it responsibly. Fantastic. So now we have a color black. So what I'm going to do now is create Sam the cat. And before it was Spot, so let's keep it consistent. Spot. Yes, it was Spot. Spot the cat. And now we are going to create a new cat. So this is great. So now Spot the cat can also meow. So now if we run this, Tom the cat should meow and Spot the cat should meow. Both of them. Oh, oopsie, they don't meow. They actually tell you what their color is. So maybe what we can do here is we can pass an additional variable into this, and we can say sound. So we, for some reason, or let's rather rename this to sound and say sound here. So now what we are doing is, instead of just meowing, we are actually calling a sound. So it can purr or hiss, whatever the case is, and then in here we can print out the sound that is passed in. So for Tom the cat, we want to now pass in our second parameter. The first parameter is itself, which is passed, and then the only one that we see here that will get passed in at this point will be the sound. So in our case it is a string, and we will say purr. So now Tom the cat is purring. Now Spot the cat, we don't want to purr, we want Spot the cat to hiss, because Spot is a bit of an aggressive furry furball. And let's see what happens now, and we can see that Tom is purring and Spot is hissing. So that's great. Now what if we wanted to define a different color for Tom and for Spot? It would seem a bit redundant for us to kind of call the color here. We want to maintain that cat's color within the class, and we want this to continue throughout the existence of our program. So what I'm going to do, what we could easily do is we could create a new function, and we could call this set color. And then again, we would need to pass our self into there and possibly a color into there. So now what we can do is we can say self dot color, because this gets passed in with a self variable, is now equal to, is now equal to color. So what this would now do is we could now set Tom the color, Tom the cat's color, Tom the cat color dot set color, and now we could pass color in here, and his color is white. And now if we print out our cat's color, even though we are passing sound into here, we will need to actually go self.color. It would now give us white, even though we are passing per into it, and would give us black, because black is the default for Spot. Let's see, so I'm expecting white and black. That's fantastic. So now this color has been maintained throughout, and now Tom's color, until we change it again, has been set to white. If we remove this, now in Python, a code comment is used with the hash sign. In PHP, you can also use a hash, but there are two other ways in PHP as well to declare comments. I'm not going to go through them now, just so that you know, in Python, if you would like to comment out something, just use the hash symbol, and what it will do is this code will not be read. So I could write anything that I wanted to in here, and this code would just not run at all. So it wouldn't throw any errors or anything like that. So now we see that black and black is being run because this line of code is not being run, and it is not ever setting the color away from white. Fantastic. Now what I would rather do is when Tom is created, I would like to set his color. So I can do this by adding his color in as a parameter here, and Spot's color in as a parameter here. White seems black and brown for him. So the way that we would do this is we would define a new function which is called a constructor function. And what a constructor function is a function that is run when the class is created. And we do this in Python using two underscores, the word init, and then another two underscores, open close brackets, and then a colon. So what we pass into the init function is self, as we do with all of our class functions, and then anything else that we pass into the constructors at this point. So I'm going to pass a color in, and this color would be brown or white. So now at this point, I would rather run our set color function, set color line of code, which will now set the color to the color that we have specified. And now because our sound is echoing out the color, when we echo out Tom's sound, it should echo out the color brown, and when we echo out Spot's sound, it should echo out the color white. I really hope that that makes sense. Let's try. Fantastic, we have these two. So just to iterate, the self.color, which is set to default to black, is now being set to brown in the instance of Tom, because the init constructor function is run when the class, or when the object is created within the class, and when Spot is created, we are setting his default color to white. If we didn't set this, his default color would remain black. So let's run that again. Oopsie, it is giving us an error on the init. So we need to pass something into this constructor. So when a class is created, if the constructor is run and it is expecting a second variable of color, we have to pass that variable into this. Lovely. See you in the next lecture.